So we did not get enough out of my buddy Robert. And when we were all done with him, man, we had a lot of good stuff, but we wanted more.
You guys should be called masochism CEO.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted more out of you, buddy, because I know enough about you. Well, never enough about you, but I know a lot about you, and there's a lot of stories, a lot of things to be told still. So we wanted to get you back on and round out who Robert Blackwell is and talk a little more about you. Robbie had some good questions, and I had a few. So I'll start out with Robbie. Welcome again to our episode of Ditch Digger CEO. We got my buddy Robert with us here today, and to round out an amazing podcast that we're doing with Robert. Robert, welcome, buddy. Again,
glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
We're here in the middle of the coronavirus, the about 30, 40, 50, 60 days of shutdown, and we're all based out of our own places right now, and a little different than last time we talked. It's amazing what can happen in a few weeks, right?
That's right. And hopefully, I ought to say a little prayer for those people who've been really affected, both health-wise and economically.
Absolutely. They better be in our prayers every night for sure, because there's too much of that going on. Robbie, you want to start off, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. Robert, thanks again for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Second time's the charm. We got confidence in that.
Hopefully I'll be better this time.
No, you were great the first time. So last time I know we talked quite a bit about your being one of the first African-American families in the Chicagoland area. And it led you to have a better broad perspective on humanity. So I guess I'm just to get a better understanding of the way in which that you view the most effective approach to getting more equal access to opportunity for individuals of all backgrounds, whether that's within a corporation or just in the early childhood educational realm as we think towards the future here.
Well, I happen to believe that there's nothing new. So you could go back in history and you can look at how do people go from poverty to prosperity. Because I think there's nowhere in the world where poor people are healthy, educated, and safe. And conversely, nowhere in the world are affluent people not healthy, educated, and safe, regardless of their color or anything like that. Obviously, Michael Jordan is black, and Michael Jordan is better off than 99.9999% of people of any color in the world. He did that because he had a skill, and he had personality, and people started buying a lot of the stuff that bore his name or his number or things like that. So if you look at how people go from poverty to prosperity, it is entrepreneurial-led economic activity that leads to the appreciation of education and social capital. Social capital is when you reach back and you pull other people along from your community typically, and when you create an aspirational roadmap for your young people. So the challenge that you have in the Black community, in my view, is that nobody does business with Blacks. And too often, I think people look at Blacks like children as opposed to an adult. So if you look at, for instance, all the charity, you would say things like, we're going to have an inner city kids program. Well, what that means is it's a little Black kid program. So what happens is there's all this charity that's directed at little kids. But what happens when they get to be 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 25, 30, so on, there's nothing for them anymore. You have an infrastructure of minority business programs where those things were intended. I think at the time, in the 1960s when they first came about, there were people, I believe, of goodwill that worked and put those programs together so that Blacks could participate in the economy because they had been left out of the economy. It wasn't accidental, it was purposeful, being left out of the economy. But what's happened is that Blacks never really participated in that. And Blacks are at the bottom of economic participation Even in the minority programs, people who are born outside the United States get more money from minority programs than blacks do. So while most people would think blacks get all the benefit from these minority programs, set-aside programs, that we actually don't. So what happens is if you don't have economic activity, you fall into poverty. And when you're in poverty, lots and lots of bad things happen. You can look at the beginning of the last century, the immigrant communities that came to this country, the Eastern European Jewish community, the Irish community, the Italian community. They went from poverty to prosperity in really about a generation and a half. Same thing for Asians. Now, why is it that blacks couldn't go through the same progress? There were obviously legal barriers that were put in the way of blacks. And when those came about, after the civil rights laws came about in the 1960s, you still had the issue of the lack of economic participation. So in my view, this is the big problem that we have. So the outcome of this, in my view, in the black community, is that all the economic proof points are in entertainment. It's musicians, it's actors, it's athletes, it's people like that. In fact, you ought to try this experiment. Name 2 famous black entrepreneurs that don't have anything to do with entertainment. I've asked this question 1,000 times and nobody's ever been able to answer it. So therefore, what is the market saying to black kids? Place your bet on entertainment. It takes as much effort to be a professional athlete as it does to be a computer programmer, to be in finance, to be an entrepreneur. It takes a lot of work, and you understand that you have to compete against other people. But the market is telling them this is where you have to place your bet. That's why there's no good guy programs or government programs to teach black kids how to play basketball, to be musicians. There's no good guy programs to teach Dominican kids to play baseball or Brazilian kids to play soccer. The market tells them that's where you place your bet. So I used to be when there was boxing. After first there was Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson became first black heavyweight champion. Lots of blacks go into boxing. Joe Louis becomes heavyweight champion. Sends market signals, go into boxing. Sugar Ray Lewis, Muhammad Ali, on through the line. So you see the kids saying, this is where to place my bet. Their families reinforce that. They have their own ecosystems that support that. So my view is then, how do we get everybody to participate in the free enterprise system? Because I think that if we don't, we can lose it. Young people have a fascination with socialism because they think it means social good, which it doesn't. It means government control over your decision making. So I think business, in my view, big businesses, in my view, are the worst. They have these false minority business programs and they talk about diversity, but don't do anything meaningful. In fact, they do things, in my view, that are quite shameful. Like, I'll give you an example. If you take let's say a big delivery company that owns planes, they want to get credit for minority business programs. So what they'll do is they'll go to somebody they're going to buy a lot of fuel from, say, we want to buy $100 million worth of fuel from you, but let's be corporate good guys, and we want you to sell us $100 million worth of fuel from this black company. Okay? They'll make $250,000 on a $100 million deal, right? Which is equivalent to 1 FTE. So this is really what happens and why blacks are so far behind. In fact, here's some numbers actually from the census, because I did the study on this. If you took all the revenues of companies in the US, that were majority-owned companies, with employees, it would have been 9.4 trillion. Women, $1 trillion. Asians, 455 billion. Hispanics, 276 billion, and blacks, 98 billion. As I say, a lot of that 98 billion is a pass-through number. Now, people would say, well, what about education? Well, blacks in that case have double the educational achievement of Hispanics. So education is not a leader. You can get educated in a lot of stuff that doesn't pay you anything. So in my view, we as a country, especially now, have to make sure that we protect the free enterprise system by making sure that those people that have capabilities get to participate in it and then exchange opportunity to responsibility for bringing somebody else along. And that way, I think in a generation, we will fix a lot of the mess that we've made. That was a long-winded answer to your question. I'm not sure if you answered me the question.
No, it definitely answers the question, but I'm glad that you supported it with the census information. I think that provides a unique perspective on it. And I think going back to that first conversation towards the end, I know Gary had mentioned the idea that he was partnering with other CEOs in the Chicagoland area about the equivalent of a MBA program to understand the ins and outs of business. And you were coming at it from a different lens in terms of access to opportunity down the road. So with that in mind, you mentioned you don't think it's the education system. I know that you had an opposing.
No, it's not that there's not an issue with the education system. There are obviously issues with our education system. However, in my view, people respond to the incentives in their environment. Like, I'll give you another example. Have you ever gotten an email that said, my uncle was a general, he left me $100 million. Give me your bank account information so I can transfer the money to you and I'll share it with you?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You know who does that? These are teenage kids in Nigeria. These are teenage kids in Nigeria that have had to learn how to read, write, and reason. They did it because there's a very strong economic incentive. Now, unfortunately, it's a perverse one because it's criminal and it's immoral. But what they've had to do in order to prepare themselves for that is to focus on their education. And I would bet you that people in Nigeria would die for any educational opportunity that somebody in the United States has. So the thing is, what are the incentives? Economies are based on incentives and constraints. That is what an economy is based on. It's incentives, constraints, alternatives, and interdependencies. So what are the incentives for you to put in 10,000 hours of work? Right? If you were, for me, right, if I want to be a cellist, right, it's too late for that. That wasn't my talent. So the market tells you where to place your bet. And it has to be the case. That is why you would have to say there's no physical reason why somebody born in the United States couldn't be a world-class soccer player. But there are none. There are no American Ronaldos or whatever the other guy from Argentina's name is, I can't remember, or David Beckham or any of those guys. Why is that? It is absolutely not a physical restraint. I'm sure that if Bo Jackson had been born in Africa or Europe or someplace, he could have been a great soccer player. He would have been a great soccer player instead of a great football player and baseball player. So there is a tie between economics and preparation for the opportunities in the economy.
So when you look at entrepreneurial opportunities and the opportunities you had or I had, right, compared to the lack of opportunities these kids in the urban environments have, there's a lot missing there, right? There's inspiration or aspiration that they don't see. A lot of examples of people in business having the success those athletes on TV have, right? And in their communities, there's nobody they can reach out and touch that have had that type of success in business. For you as a young guy, you saw something somewhere, somebody. Explain that, what you saw to inspire you to be a guy that leads in business and innovates and discovers, all different opportunities in business.
Well, I would say it was a combination of good luck, mostly good luck. I have two great parents, right? I had nothing to do with that. I was lucky to be the oldest. So when I was born, my father was 23 and my mother was 20. So, I said they were so broke they couldn't pay attention. They had no money. And that was an advantage for me because my parents gave me essentially a set of rules that if I followed, I could do whatever I wanted. Mm-hmm. If I did my best in school, which, I was a horrible student for most of my life until I was 16 years old. I just didn't really pay attention, but I was always into making money. I could walk around and pick up Coke bottles and take it in for the, the nickel they would give you. I would sell them in school. It was always thinking about how to make money because one is my parents didn't have a lot of money to give me. And I just found freedom in that. And the other thing, I never liked people telling me what to do. I never wanted to be either dependent on somebody or people telling me what to do. So, my parents said, as long as you're in this house, you have to do what I say. So when I was 17, I was out of school. I said goodbye. In fact, my father said, what are you still doing here? So I was lucky to have parents of great character that gave me freedom and that they didn't have any money. So I had to figure things out myself. And also, I would say I was lucky enough to have a little bit of a mathematical brain. In fact, my whole brain works in numbers. In fact, it's funny. I wrote when I was 24, I wrote a book on trading theory, and I gave it to my father to read. And my father said, "Well, I got two things to tell you." He said, "Number one, you don't know how to write." And number two, he said, "Do you know what the difference between being weird and eccentric is?" He said, "When you get to be rich, you'll be eccentric. Right now, you're weird." But I was always pretty mathematical, and I'd say also I really believe that God put me on this earth to do something other than just entertain myself. So I would say just being lucky, having some skill in math, and being willing to sleep on the floor if I didn't have anything. So I'm really not a person that cares a lot about stuff or what people think. I care about being fair, but I don't really care what people think about me. Mm-hmm. To me, I'm not asking you anything about your life. If I can help you, great. But, the fact if you don't like the way that I eat or the fact that I don't go out or do other stuff or that I work from 4 a.m. to 11, doesn't make any difference to me.
Yeah. So tell us about the businesses you're in, and the technology business and the ping pong business and the opportunities it's given you, these businesses and this entrepreneurial life that you've created. Tell us about the opportunities you've had to discover cool things, meet people you'd never be able to meet without it. Give opportunity to people that worked out to be great opportunity for you to see other people do well within your vision, right? Tell us a little bit about that kind of stuff.
Well, I've been lucky. I've had a number of businesses and been involved. I would call myself kind of a little impatient misfit. So I really like discovering, and the things that are, I'd say, most important to me in the world is just being number one in the world at something. That's always what's driven me. And remember when I was young, my father told me, he said, told me a couple piece of advice that I really took to heart. He said, if I give 100%, I may not be the best, but I'll be in the top 5%. And he said, the only thing in life you have is your reputation. You can always get money back, but you can never really get your reputation back. So those things, I would say, really drove me. So I've always been a little bit of, I'd say, a little bit of an oddball. You know, people think I'm a little bit on the Asperger's spectrum, maybe, because I think my brain works a little bit differently. I mean, it's really mathematical. But I would say I've been lucky enough to be in business and meet lots of very interesting people. Met some people, I would say, when I was young, and that when I was young, I was really a radical. And in fact, I remember when my family grew up in segregation. So we lived in an all-black neighborhood until I was 12 years old. So the first time we actually lived around whites, a neighbor asked me, I think I was 12 years old, she asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was in Topeka, Kansas. I said, I want to be a Black Panther. And she freaked out and went and called my mother and stuff like that. So I would say I got a chance to meet somebody, one of the original Black Panthers, a guy named Stokely Carmichael. And I was unimpressed by one thing, but then impressed by another. I would say he was very anti-American during his days as a Black Panther, but he had gone to Algeria. He'd left, and then he came back with a very different perspective. And I remember hearing him talk about that. When me and my father had a company together, this would have been from 92 to 95. We started a company, and then I sold him my half of the company. He was reading the paper one day, and he said, hey, you know, there's this young guy who's the first Black editor of the Harvard Law Review. We should meet him. So we called him up, and we met him. He came to meet us. And obviously, this is Barack Obama. And him and I became really, really good friends, even though I would say he's left-handed and I'm right-handed, so you can figure that out politically. But I still have a lot of love for him and his family, even though we may not agree on some things politically, but doesn't matter. I don't agree with a lot of stuff with my own father, my parents, but I love them the same. So I got to be really good friends with him, and I saw the journey of something happen that I think almost nobody in my generation would believe what would happen, is that we would have a Black president. Not just a Black president with no money, with an Arabic name. Which that whole journey was, I would say, especially when he became senator, because I was there from kind of when he was running in 95 and then became senator. And obviously I was there when he gave that famous speech in 2004. I was standing maybe 15 feet away. I said that, and I just told Barack I was really proud of him, and this is something that's historic that I think is really going to be really good for the country. In fact, I remember I had a friend from Europe, and I told him in 2003 Barack was going to be president. And he said, no chance that's going to happen. I said, you'll see, he's going to be president.
In 2003, what was he doing in 2003?
He was running for Senate in 2003. He became senator in 2004.
U.S. Senate.
U.S. Senate. He was a state senator.
Right.
So there's that. We did something, it was, in 2016, and got a chance to talk to the Pope around, table tennis and some of the things that were going on. But I met a lot of great business people in the world. And I would tell you that people that I most enjoy talking to are Uber drivers. I find them much more interesting than CEOs typically, because you can just see these are people who are taking advantages of opportunities that they're presented. And to me, this is really the power of the free enterprise system and property rights. They have a car. In fact, I stopped. I got rid of my car and started taking Uber because Black people drive Uber. And I said, these are really hardworking people. They have their property. I need a ride. They got a ride. Uber sits in the middle. And they all seem to be thankful of the economic opportunity. They were all really good people, just trying to take care of their families. So there's that. I had a chance to meet a guy named Aliko Dangote, he's the richest man in Africa. Well, he was until recently worth $20 billion. I got to take a tour of Nigeria, and I met, as part of the tour, I met Aliko and some of the Nigerian CEOs. And I remember I went there with a friend of mine, two friends of mine, and it was, I would say, almost a religious experience for me and the other guys with me as well. Because the first time in our lives we had seen a Black person say, I'm going to invest $1 billion here, I'm going to invest $1 billion here. And he was talking about his money and how he was dedicated to making his country better. And we had never experienced anything like that ever. I got a chance to go to Senegal. I got invited to go on a tour of Senegal, and I saw a place called Gorée Island, where it's the westernmost tip of Africa, where the slaves, it was kind of a launching place for the slaves. And obviously that was kind of an emotional experience. But I got to see and meet African people who were just really good people. In fact, I've been to, I don't know how many countries in the world, 40 some countries in the world. And what you see is that most people are pretty much just the same. They love their kids the same. They want the same type of things. They may eat differently. They may, have different religions or things, but they tend to just, be humans and care about the things that we care about. They love their parents and they love their kids, and, their wives yell at them, stuff like that. So I would say I've got really good friends all over the world and people from all types of economic backgrounds. So I don't really get impressed by people's wealth. I just get impressed by people's character.
I love it. Now, were you offered any positions in the White House at all, or no? Being a friend of the president?
I would say nobody is going to offer a libertarian a role in government.
I don't know about that. A good friend of mine is a libertarian, and he's an advisor to this president.
Which one?
Steve Moore.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay, so, well, the answer is it's...
not many, though. You're right.
There's not many of them. And plus, I don't think that I could be in government, because if you're not a customer, I kind of don't want you telling me what to do.
Yeah. Sure.
And so, yeah, I would say you don't have to be in politics to have an influence on the direction of the country, pardon me.
Did you get invited to the White House when Barack was the president?
Yeah, we had lunch. I had lunch in his office, and I've been there a few times. And so, yes.
Cool. That'd be a great experience.
Oh, look, to me, it was no big deal. It's an old house. It's like a museum, and it's just me kind of talking to my friend. And most of it was, "How you doing? How's Michelle and the kids doing? Everything okay? Good to see you. I hope you're not too stressed." Just keep in touch every once in a while. That was it.
And
Probably refreshing for him.
do you talk to him? Oh, so go ahead, Robbie. Sorry.
I was just saying it's probably refreshing for him to have a conversation like that.
Well, listen, I didn't want to ask him. There's nothing for me to ask him. I just want to be his friend. Say, man, how you're doing, right? Everybody's trying to angle at what they can get from you, and you're dealing with probably stuff on a daily basis that none of us would want to know about, right? People getting killed and kidnapped and threats to the country, and you imagine that all day long, every day. Sometimes you just, hey man, how you doing? I'm doing good. Thanks for, glad to see you. That was it.
Right.
Cool. Have you remained friends with him after the fact?
Yeah, I listen periodically, but look, Barack is now the most famous guy in the world. He's probably one of the 3 most famous people on earth.
Sure.
So I don't really communicate with him that much. If he comes to Chicago or something, and I'm here and he's there, I'll probably say hello to him. But, I'm just not a celebrity chaser. Listen, I love him and his family, and I wish him well. And he's a guy of great character, and like I said, I wish him well. But
And did he respect your conservative views or your libertarian? I should say libertarian.
yeah, listen, I think Barack is the same as me. Barack, I don't think you have to believe everything that he believes politically to be his friend.
Of course not.
I think he believes what he believes, and it's like what Kennedy said to Khrushchev. You're not going to make me a communist, and I'm not going to make you, a capitalist. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So yeah, Barack has his beliefs, and he believes it. And he's a smart man. We're the same age. He doesn't need me yelling in his ear. It's not going to do anything. His opinions are informed, and so.
Was it fun to give him a little bit of friendly objectivity?
No, listen. I purposely don't want to talk to him about politics. I don't want to talk to him about politics. I just want to be his friend. It's politics all day long. Obviously, he's involved in politics again right now. He's not interested in that for me. Like, to be honest with you, there are people that like Bernie. I'm not interested in it.
You're a pretty astute dude, though, when it comes to free enterprise and the beginnings of it and the value of it and the danger of communism. You're a really well versed guy with that stuff. I would have thought that you'd have challenged your buddy a little bit in some way.
Listen, to be honest with you, like I said, I'm not. I could have a conversation with Bernie. And I'm not going to change Bernie's mind at all, and he's not going to change my mind at all. So, I've never met him. If I ever met him, I'd be polite, say, how are you? But the idea that I'm going to waste my time or his time arguing about free enterprise versus the dangers of socialism, you know what I mean? That hole up here is closed.
But if there's a debate you can have on stage with Bernie, wouldn't that be fun?
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah. You might change some minds around you, right? That'd be fun.
Oh, listen, that would be fun.
Yeah. Tell us about Killerspin. That's a cool company. It's really, really fun to watch what you've done with that. Tell us about that.
So Killerspin is I started it because I used to be a trader. And what I thought was, this was in 2002, I've been a trader in the 80s, and I was there during the crash. So that was funny. I was actually a technical analyst, and I knew we were going to have a crash. So I saw that whole thing out. I mean, I was there when the 87 crash happened. I was on the floor. I would say it was the closest thing I can imagine to a typhoon. It was not a typhoon, what do you call that? The tidal wave. It was just something unbelievable. A tsunami, that's the word I'm looking for, thanks. So I remember the experience, and since I studied the trading of history, you can start to recognize patterns, and the time to worry is when everybody is riding high. The time to be brave is when everybody's panicked. That's what I think, like the role of a CEO. As a CEO, you need to be worried when everybody's asking you for a bunch of money and to spend a bunch of money on stuff and isn't life so good. That's a time where you ought to be a little bit cautious. And the time where everybody's panicked and freaking out, that's a time where that's a time of opportunity. You need to tell people, calm down, especially if you have to calm yourself down and get past the fear. So with Killerspin, in 2000, Chicago had something called the Ping Pong Festival. I said, we don't have any relationships in the public sector. I think the stock market's going to crash. We should diversify into the public sector. So we sponsored something called the Ping Pong Festival. And the Ping Pong Festival was something a woman named Lois Weisberg, who was the head of cultural affairs, had. And she put 300 tables out all across the city. We were a sponsor. And then she asked me to be the chairman of the Ping Pong Festival, which I did. And whenever there were tables around, there was always just lines of people to play. So I started to get what I call this entrepreneurial itch, what I call it. I said, there's something there. You know, everybody in the world knows table tennis, but nobody can name the name of a brand. Therefore, there's a space there. If we can build a brand around that, and we can make table tennis beautiful, then what we can do is we can create a great brand in a category that's commoditized. So we started Killerspin, and we started off being a media company. So we produced these big events, and we ended up being a partner with ESPN. So we had done things that nobody had ever done previously in the sport. And then we got really quickly known around the world because I think people that like table tennis wanted table tennis to get the same respect that other sports got. In fact, in 2001, when I decided I was going to start Killerspin and I was going to create this event, I wanted to see if I could have the best players in the world come and be a part of this event. Now, nothing like this had ever happened in the United States. So I actually went to China and I got a meeting with the head of their Olympic committee. And I showed him the video. I said, this is my vision for what table tennis can be. Would you participate in this event? It's the 30-year anniversary of ping pong diplomacy. Would you come and participate in this event? Now, this was kind of like getting Jerry Reinsdorf to send the Bulls to my basketball tournament when Michael Jordan was there. But he did it. And we did it, and it was successful. And we had really changed the presentation of table tennis in the world. So the company was about helping people to connect with the people that they love and that they need their love through table tennis. Now, the company now is about what I call unplug and play, which is about connecting with people you love and that need your love through what we call break time play. So any kind of play that you can do around break time, what the company does is it facilitates that connectivity. Because one of the things I think that's coming out of this COVID thing is people now have, I would say in some way, retrogressed 30 years where people ate breakfast together, they went to work or school and then they ate dinner together. I think that is something that's been lost on lots of people. And I think people are going to have to feel now the importance of human connection. Because I think we've been in this technology days for a while where people are confusing efficient communication with human relationships. Relationships are something that happen in person. So imagine you're in a jail cell and you have everything you want in a jail cell. You got a computer, you can communicate with anybody you want. You got a refrigerator, you got your exercise equipment, you can do whatever you want, but you're locked up in that jail cell. Void of human contact. You soon will you will become mentally ill. And that's what happens in jail, right? People go into solitary confinement. They become mentally ill, not because there's any disease inside there, it's because they're devoid. Humans are social animals.
Sure.
They need people. They need other people in order to be healthy. So on the other side, this is one of the challenges. It's also going to come out of this COVID crisis. Those people that don't have families and everything, the isolation is going to start to create some mental challenges for people. So what Killerspin is all about is helping people connect again to the people that they love and that need their love through play. And when I started playing that's what I did with my father. Me and my father would play together. And it turns out that I used to tell the story why, I have these memories of me and my father playing. And I said, well, this is how I knew my father loved me, until he corrected me. He said, well, I got to tell you the real story. He said, the real story is my father's, again, 23 years older than me. So I'm a teenager. He's in his 30s. He's focused on his career. And my mother said to him, I know you're focused on your career and you're busy, but don't forget you have a son. So don't be a bum and spend time with your son. So not wanting to make my mother mad, he gave in and bought a table tennis table. And that's what me and my father did together. And then that's what me and my friends did together. So almost everybody has these memories of them playing table tennis with somebody. And usually it is somebody that you care about.
How's business been and during this shutdown and all that? How's business been for you?
Well, actually, we're surviving. We're kind of doing well because people need activities in their home. The corporate part of the business is totally shut down, obviously, but the home business it's holding its own. It's doing well.
Where do you sell Killerspin? Online? Is it
It's only online.
Only online.
Yes. So most of our sales are either through our own website or through Amazon. The high-end things we sell ourselves, and Amazon sells most of the low-end things.
And what do you feel? Is there anything you've done innovatively to change the industry or to push the industry to a different place? And your brand is awesome. Was there anything else you've been able to do in quality of equipment, technology?
Well, we decided that we were not going to be a technology company. There are companies that are technology companies, and what they focus on is, let's call it, performance equipment for people where let's say golf or tennis or table tennis in this case is their primary sport. That's the thing that they like to do most. So it would be, there is a table tennis equivalent of Head, of Wilson, of Spalding. Those are just, in our view, manufacturers of equipment. Killerspin's a totally different company. What we are focused on is making table tennis beautiful. Beautiful equipment, beautiful experiences. So everything to us is about beautiful and picking a space where we can be number one in the world in. So we created the designer category. We created the media category. We created, when we started, we focused on promoting women, which nobody had ever done. Where 70% of the people that play are men. But we said we're going to go really against the grain because I believe in business. The only thing that protects margin is differentiation. If you're not differentiated, you will be a commodity really fast. So brand and differentiation is the key, in my view, to having a business that has margin.
Yeah, that makes sense. And part of what we were actually chatting about prior to jumping on the call today is Chris had realized that you have a formula for decision making.
Yes.
I'd be curious just to learn a little bit more about that and how you've applied that into Killerspin specifically.
Okay, so that is true. So I wrote another weird book lately on algorithms. It's a quantitative method for doing decision making in digital, what I call digital capability portfolios. It's kind of using the same math that quantitative traders use, but applied to digital investments. But this is the formula we use, is that results equals the quality of strategy plus execution divided by time. So you always start with specifically what you want to get accomplished. You create a strategy that makes you unique and loved as in trusted in a category by a customer. You create an efficient execution engine, which are people, processes, tools, and facilities. And then you set a time frame, because there's an inverse relationship between results and time, which is, by the way, that is why time is money.
Yeah.
So that is the high level of the equation. There's more to it, but that's the high level.
Right. And do you have a specific use case in mind or example that?
Anything we do has to fit that formula.
Really?
So with Killerspin, we have something called an innovation lens. So before we take anything to market, there are like 8 steps that we go through before we take anything to market. And off the top of my head, one of them is, does this involve what we call skill, thrill, or chill? Does it involve learning or equipment? Does it create excitement? That's a thrill. Or is it chill? Does it create some kind of, I call it mental relaxation or rejuvenation? Does it fit our economic model? Will it create aspiration or a memory with our customers and employees? Does it solve an emotional or financial problem? Can we do it better than anybody else in the world? So we have these very strict, I'd say, criteria that is related to our innovation engine. And innovation is ways about, to me, it's creating some source of value, new value, aligned to revenue, cost, risk, or service quality. So we are pretty algorithmic, I would say, in all the decisions that.
Say that again, Robert.
Okay, so that, to me, innovation is about creating in value in one of 4 categories: revenue, cost, risk, and service quality. So revenue and service quality, obviously, you get your money. That is related to stakeholder experience. The experiences of your customers are what determine the revenue side of the equation. What you keep relates to what I call lean operations, and that's the mitigation of risk and the management of cost. And you do that by understanding all the components of cost. So there's a bunch of geeky math. I'm happy to send you. I'm afraid I'd bore you with it. That involves a bunch of Greek letters: delta, alpha, gamma, theta, all kinds of stuff.
That makes great sense. What are the values that you guys live by? Anything? Is it just is it verbal? Is it written? Do you practice your values?
I would say the values of the company are where we want to be a place where the most talented people in our profession want to work. And we're a trusted partner to our customers. That's the core. So not to do anything that if it was in the newspaper, you would be embarrassed by it. Because I think that if you don't have good character, people with good character won't come to work with you. And
Sure.
No company can grow to me, faster than its ability to attract the right kind of people, and where you have customers that you can create an emotional connection with. And I would say phoniness comes through. Employees can tell, customers can tell. So in my view, it's also being about something bigger than yourself without, I'd say some corny stuff that people talk about that they don't really mean. It's just marketing. So for us, one of the things that we're going to be doing, rolling out, is an agent program. And we're going to ask people that if you're going to buy from us anyway, please consider buying from one of our agents. Those agents are going to be young people with special needs. Because what happens with young people with special needs is after they become 22 and they have to leave high school and these programs, there's nothing for them. So as a parent, and I actually have a daughter with autism, what you're concerned about is, I would say, the opportunities and the dignity of your child once they get out of school in that kind of protective cocoon. So we're trying to make sure that they have employment and entrepreneurial opportunities. And we think that if we can do that and we can be impactful, maybe some other people will copy us. And these young people will have opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. The other thing that also I try to do is to go find young people and help them start in business. People that have, I think, some entrepreneurial capability, but they need some mentorship. They need some people that will be hard on them, because listen, business is hard. Not that you're going to be nasty to them, but you're just not going to accept anything that's less than being world class. And that's what I say to people that we try to be helpful to. I'm willing to help you because obviously people help me. But if you're not willing to be world class, to figure out what it takes to be world class, and to put in the effort to be world class, you may not be world class today. If you're 26 or 27 or 28 or 30, it is unlikely that you're going to be world class today unless you're an athlete. But in business, that's going to take time. But if you're not willing to commit yourself to the journey, I'm just going to go find somebody else who is.
I love it. I love it, Robert. I say exactly the same thing to my teams. I said, if any business we're in, if we can't strive to be world class with the goal of being world class, right, and then we don't want to be there. So I mean, if it's a business we get into that becomes a very commoditized business that we can't differentiate from, probably not the place we want to be very long, right? If any business we're in, we want to strive to be different and better than the competition in any way we can, and with the goal of being world class. When people say what's world class, I mean, some people mistaken that as being the number one best of the best in the world at one thing, and hey, that's a great goal. But being world class, in my opinion, is being one of the top 1%, in my opinion, in the industry you're in, still striving to be number one. And I think that you can reach that goal, kind of like you said, top 5%, top 1% in your space. You're gonna have a lot of fun. You're gonna be successful, and you're gonna create a lot of opportunity. And when you look at your business, where do you feel you're in the top 1% in? Killerspin to me seems like you got.
I would say that in the areas where we focus, we are number one in the world. We're sure we know about that. We created the designer category. We're number one in the world in that. When we first created the media category, like we know one of our YouTube clips had 17.5 million views. That was number one in the world by far. The educational series we had was number one in the world.
Well, what was that clip that gave us 17.5 million views?
I'm sorry?
What type of clip was that?
It was a competition clip that we had. We had an event at a place called Mohegan Sun, which is a casino outside of, it's in Connecticut. And they actually wanted us to do a table tennis event to entertain what they call their Asian whales. Because if you're in the gambling business, Chinese are really important customers.
Yeah.
And then the ESPN filmed it, and we put this clip on YouTube. So I know in the areas where we're number one in the world. In fact, if we don't have the chance to be number one in the world, but it's a necessary product, we try to push it to free so that we include it in an offering. And in fact, we have what I call a Lagniappe strategy. I don't know if you've heard of the word Lagniappe.
No.
You ever see, used to be a TV show called The Cajun Cook. I don't know if you saw that. But Lagniappe is a French word, or maybe a Cajun word, and it means a little extra. It's the equivalent of a baker's dozen. You know, a baker's dozen is 13.
Yep.
13 donuts or whatever it is. So, you know, it's just a little extra. That's it's a surprise that creates a connection with the customer.
Mm-hmm. Cool. How do you spell that?
Oh, wow. It's definitely not phonetic. Hold on a second. I'm going to tell you right now. Give me
Laniak?
No. It's not anything like that. L-A-N. Yeah. It's Lagniappe.
Yeah, I would have never gotten there.
Yeah. In fact, if you type Lanyap, it will come up.
Cool. I like that word. It's awesome. What else you got for him, Robbie?
Well, I think that what I'm always curious about, just being a futurist by heart and inherently in me, I'm interested in knowing, I guess, your future roadmap for potentially new entrepreneurial endeavors, or adding a third company onto your resume here.
Well, there's two things. I am looking at changing the company. So EKI Digital is a company where we've been kind of successful helping large organizations, I would say, find financial opportunity. We've helped companies identify billions of dollars in inefficiencies, and we call revenue, cost, risk, and service quality. We kind of have an algorithmic approach to doing that. So the last month I've been writing it's almost like it's a combination of a new business plan, and it's been in my head for a while. And what's the word I'm looking for? Academic paper on using the quantitative method for discovering opportunities, and we call these digital capability portfolios. So it's essentially saying you can use, there are companies like Citadel, like there's a company called Renaissance Technologies, pardon me, that was started by a mathematician called Jim Simons. He's the most successful investor in history. He was a mathematician, and he started the company in his late 40s. And after he takes his 5% admin fee plus his 44% of earnings, his customers he's returned 38% per year to his customers.
What?
Yeah. What?
Yes. You have to look him up. There's a really good book. It is called The Man That Solved the Markets. It is about quantitative. There's something called the quants in trading. And what they're doing is in fact, I wrote an article called Algorithms and the Death of IT, where it shows a corollary between what happened in the trading world, where there's no more floors anymore. There's no more trading floors really anymore. It's all computing. It's all computers now. And what's going to happen in IT. So I believe that all systems are natural systems, and you can use math to discover things that, even why people make certain decisions, even politics. I've even created a factor in this formula, I would say, for politics in organizations. It is associated with all kinds of stuff, risk factors associated with
politics don't work well in organizations, does it? And it doesn't really work.
No,
well.
actually, unfortunately, politics is a very big part of organization, because if you think about politics as individual incentives, people behave based on the incentives and constraints in their environment. So this is why, for instance, in our industry in technology, a company, let's say you've got a CIO, and they know they've got to make $100 million investment in order to deliver some big new system or something like that. And they have two alternatives. They could use IBM. IBM is going to cost them $100 million, plus it's probably going to go over by 50%. Or they could come and work with EKI Digital, and we'll say we'll do it for 70. Now, if it was just math, we would be the obvious choice. However, if that CIO knows that there's risk, and you say to him, this thing blew up, why did you hire that little company? That was his decision. If he hires IBM, it's like, I hired IBM. That's the way the world works. People will go and do things to avoid personal risk. That is a part of companies, and people do it all the time.
Businesses, and I'm in though. We constantly focus on eliminating politics within business, to where there's accountability. You take risk, and you learn from the mistakes you make. And we expect people to be accountable, but yet take risk. We trust you to take risk. Lose and fail once in a while. Hopefully we're going to learn from the failure, as long as they're measured. They're not killer failures, right? I can't stand when politics are in small and mid-sized businesses.
Well, like I said, it's everywhere. You can't avoid it. However, this is what the importance of culture. To me, you have only three things in business. You have stakeholder experiences, right? What you take to market and how you treat your customers. You have lean operations, which is not making money, not wasting money in the delivery of your products or services to your customers. And then you have culture, because culture spreads both toxins and nutrients throughout your organization. If you have a culture of discipline, not a culture of toxicity, but a culture of discipline, where people know how to make decisions, not that it's just some, I said, random bunch of guesswork, but you have a framework of decision making. So if you follow the decision making, by the way, you cannot do experimentation without failure, and you can't make progress without experimentation. So therefore, you need to have, in my view, we have what I call an innovation budget. An innovation budget is where you don't exactly know you cannot guarantee the outcome, but you use, I'd say, the scientific method to work your way through to new offerings or new solutions, and understanding that it's not going to be perfect the first time, but at least you're using more of a scientific method as a part of your innovation process. And too often people don't do that. They're undisciplined. And when you're undisciplined, bad things start to happen in your culture. You start to blame shift and have fights and be protective over territory because you have a toxic culture.
Can you repeat that first part? So it was the experimentation you can't have without failure. What was
you cannot have experimentation without failure. You can't do it. You have to go through a process. You create a hypothesis, or something is based on a framework that you've established. In our case, we have an innovation lens. So one of the things in our innovation lens is the customer has to be able to enjoy this within 20 minutes of receiving this product. So if somebody comes up with an idea and the customer has to put together 100 different parts, it may look beautiful, but if it takes them 2 hours to put together, you shouldn't have made that decision. You should have known better in the first place. Then you're being intellectually lazy versus going through an experiment. You didn't quite get what you want, because sometimes you'll learn if you go through experiments, disciplined experimentation that's aligned to your innovation engine. You may learn things that you can use in another process or another product. It is not always going to be, experimentation is not always going to be perfect. But if you don't do experimentation, you become commoditized very fast because you don't have the ability to invent, and all you can do is copy. And if you're copying, then automatically you're using a commoditized product or process. Commoditization is fine when it comes to lean operations, right? You don't need to reinvent everything, right? You can use best practices or things like that. The customers don't reward you for that. They reward you for variation of offerings in, let's say your product offerings. But the fact is, if you can buy a piece of software that's you can live with, like I'm sure you use Word. Nobody's going to go in, which a programmer could come up with an alternative for Word, but that would be a waste of effort in an area where you're not going to get any value. So that is the difference between stakeholder experience. That should have a high degree of variability, which requires experimentation and innovation, versus lean operations, where you want to have a very low amount of variability. You're trying to eliminate waste.
Yeah, and in innovation at any point, like as you're saying, you're going to fail. You're going to fail often if you're going outside the box and you're trying to swim away from commoditization, right? I mean, you're going to try things that are different, and you're going to fail. And with the failures, you're going to learn a little more, and eventually you're going to hopefully be in a place to do some things different than your competition. And we do that consistently with all of our businesses, and it costs money to do that. But if you have your customer's ear and your customer's trust, you can do that a lot, and partner with your customers. You'll build strong relationships with your customers as you're building new products and innovation. So I agree 100%. I mean, in a political organization, it's tough to do that because everybody's about covering their butt, and they're not, in my opinion, they're not taking the accountability, and because they're worried about their jobs, right? So I think small businesses, mid-sized businesses have the ability to do that. Large businesses sometimes get political and don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah, you're smarter than me, Gary. That's why I'm on this side of the camera. And you
No.
go.
I'm not. I just believe in innovation. I believe in experimenting and partnering with my best customers. And I think I see our bigger competitors, bigger customers in my space, bigger competition in my space, let's say, don't usually do that. They look at that as too high a risk without enough reward, because it costs money to do that, right?
Sure.
But when you do that stuff with your customers, you build better relationships with your customers. They can take ownership in the innovation also, which is really fun. So, Robbie, what else you got for our buddy here? He's got a lot of information, man.
I'm going to take my last question one step further. So I guess in thinking through the next phases, what seems to be more aligned with EKI, do you think that traditional computing power is going to be enough to capture in every variable that you want, or have you looked into the potential for quantum computing in that?
Look, I think there's a difference between quantitative analysis and quantum computing. My own view, there is already sufficient computing power for most businesses. Most businesses are not lacking computing power. Maybe Fermilab needs quantum computing, or, people in medicine or something like that. But for most businesses, they don't have a computing power problem. What they have is an architecture problem. They have a lack of architecture. What I would say when it comes to investing in IT, digital is an asset just like any other asset class. It should work the same way. If you were going to build a road or a bridge or a building or anything like that, what you would do is somebody with a need would say, hey, there's an opportunity. What's the opportunity worth? I'm going to create an opportunity profile, an investment opportunity profile. That investment profile said, here's what the benefit, here's what the investment's going to be, here's a roadmap to capturing it. It gets presented to typically an investment committee. they make the decision on whether or not they're going to invest in it. Once they do, then it goes to a design build manager. The design build manager is responsible for creating a blueprint that gets presented to the customer, which is a visualization of what the ecosystem looks like or the final product looks like at completion. Then they can give the same set of plans, which has different parts, to the carpenters, to the plumbers, to the electricians, to the steel guys, to anybody, to the furniture people. So everybody has a completed visualization of what this ecosystem looks like at completion. Then the design build partner decides, hey, this is the best trade for this, there's the best trade for that, there's a best guy to do this, and they manage it through completion. I've never met a CEO yet that has ever seen anything like the equivalent of a blueprint for how technology is going to serve their company. Not one that's a simple one that's on a piece of paper. You don't have to be an architect to be able to look at a drawing and say, oh, I get it, that's what that building is going to look like.
Right.
Okay, you may not understand all the, the load calculations and stuff like that are embedded in there, but you can get a sense of what the thing is going to look like at completion. I've never met a CEO that has ever had anybody presented a blueprint. This is the role of technology in helping us make the work of delivering our services to our stakeholders more efficient. And by the way, that is the only thing technology can do for you.
Right.
So people make bets on technology without, it's like saying, hey, I need a building. Let me go throw up a building. Well, what's a building going to look like? What are the needs of the stakeholders who are involved in this? Can I see what it's going to look like in advance? What are all the components of cost in delivering that? It's very immature. It's a very immature industry.
So,
very fragmented.
So Robert, you've been around algorithms a long time, and before algorithms were really, something to be talked about. And what are the algorithms of yesterday have in common with AI of today? I mean, is it where it began, or tell me about that?
Well, listen, people have to understand what AI means. All that is, AI, artificial intelligence, means algorithmic opportunity identification. Somebody comes up with a set of algorithms that go into a set of data and discover opportunity. In fact, if this AI really came out, in my view, of the financial industry and the whole trading world. Because what traders do is they determine what the theoretical value of an instrument is at a particular period of time. Let's say it's an option. I've got an option on the S&P 500. I'm going to buy a call or a put. So without getting too deep into that, you can calculate the theoretical price of that option based on where the market is, things that are happening in the market. How close to expiration are you? In fact, it's very much like insurance. Insurance is totally algorithmic. It's just a measurement of risk. And the relationship between you and your insurance company is the same risk between, in a financial market, a hedger and a speculator. What you're doing is you are paying a premium to an insurance company to offset your risk, right? If I get into a car accident, I could be injured and I could get millions of dollars of injury to somebody else or myself. So I'm going to pay my premium to offset my risk. Now, the insurance companies have to be able to calculate a portfolio of risk to determine what your premium is.
Sure.
If you are and it's the same thing, if there are factors that go into that. If you're a 16-year-old male, your insurance is going to be a lot more expensive than if you are a 45-year-old mother.
Unless you're buying term life insurance.
No, now in that case, if you're buying term life insurance, the opposite is the case, right? If you're 65, your term life insurance, is going to be a lot more expensive than if you're 25.
Exactly. I bought life insurance when I was 16 because somebody told me I should. I think it was like a $30,000 policy. It was a big deal because I didn't know if I'd ever be worth $30,000, right? And then recently at 56 they just turned 57. I'm buying a bunch of life insurance again, and I've done it over my life, different times. And boy, you better get all life insurance you can while you're young, because it gets kind of expensive.
Yeah, exactly. To me, it's the same thing. Those are just algorithms. And by the way, algorithms are not new. This is why I think there's nothing new under the sun.
So in our business, where we, in one of our businesses that Robbie was a big part of is site, where we do the drone assessments of real estate all over the country, as well as now cell towers and easements and all kinds of stuff they're doing. We're trying to put that in a world where we're using AI to do a lot of the repetitive work, right? Repetitive engineering and repetitive assessment. And once we get there, it's going to be a really inexpensive product. It'll be a fun product to continue to grow. It'll probably be a SaaS product in the long run. But we need help on that side of it. Just leadership when it comes to technology and understanding how we build that AI. If anybody out there, that's strong in building AI like that, let me know.
Listen, I'm happy to help you. I have no value on this earth except for algorithms.
All right. Well, you know what? Hey, Robbie, we got to connect him with Austin and the team there.
It happens to be pretty valuable at this point in time, so I'd take the position pretty well.
Sounds like maybe a possible board member there, Robbie.
Yeah.
Listen, anything I can do for Superman there, I'm your guy.
Yeah, you're funny. Are you on any boards at all, Robert, or no?
Yeah, I'm on the board of board of U.S. Bank, and I'm on the board of Chamber of Commerce and some other business leadership council. And
how about any startups or business boards, like small business or businesses that need advisory board guys?
If somebody, I tend to help people when they need help, and I just kind of like that. It's because I think I've been extraordinarily lucky, and obviously people help me. And when I was 20 and thought I knew more than I did, they took my meetings, and you probably when I left, they were laughing, but they made themselves accessible. I mean, I think about myself when I was 21. I would have probably not been as kind as they were to me.
So I got about 5 more minutes left, but again, mentorship. Your mom and dad were amazing mentors in your life and business. I think you mentioned somebody back last time we talked. You round it up again. Your dad. When it comes to business and.
Oh my God, a lot of people. My parents. There was a guy named Earl Neal. He was a lawyer here in Chicago, and he went out of his way to help, especially kind of young Black entrepreneurs from my generation. And he would make himself available and just be helpful and give you guidance and not ask for anything. I would say he was a mentor of mine, but you can also get mentorship by reading.
Yeah.
I probably have on my little iPhone 100 books that I've listened to and 150 podcasts. You can get mentorship just by reading, listening, watching.
Sure, no doubt about it. Well, hey, I got a little more out of this orange this time. We'll probably have to have another time, Robbie. This guy's awesome. I really appreciate our friendship, and I want to get to know you as a buddy for the last 50 years of our lives. We know we both got about 50 years left, right?
I'm with you, man.
So I want to do more stuff with you. So I appreciate your time, man. Thanks for that.
It's good.
Robbie, get out of this. What nuggets did Robbie get out of this? That's all I want to know.
Yeah, Robert. So we usually like to summarize some of the takeaways and share them from all parts of the conversation. So first one that I got today was give 100% to be in the top 5%. And the way that I look at that is that hard work often is difficult to teach, but if you're able to instill that in an individual's personality, you have the potential to become world class. And I think Robert's a perfect example of that. The second is that reputation precedes you, and it's one of the few things in life that you don't have complete control over. So you need to make sure you live with high standards of yourself, both from an integrity standpoint, as well as leading back to the first point, is making sure that you're devoted to demanding excellence of yourself. The third here is don't be impressed by wealth, be impressed by character. And I think that applies to almost every facet of life and business, but specifically, I think, to an HR process. I think there's elements to hiring and recruiting the right talent, and ultimately what you need to hire for is the right culture and personality that facilitates the growth of the business. And the next one it was actually super unique in my opinion, which was worry when everyone is riding high and be brave when people are panicking. And I think that obviously we're recognizing the impacts of that right now, and it's ultra top of mind for everybody. But at the end of the day, there's a ton of validity behind that. And as we move forward, it's something, Gary, you and I should continue to think more about. And
yeah, absolutely, that's part of what we talk about. Complacency kills, and as a leader, you want to be on top of when things are really good. You want to be on top of how you invest in being different and stronger and world class, as Robert said, right? And when things are tough, you got to rise up, and it's time to rise up and lead and be bold then, right?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the unique area here in the next takeaway for me was that in order to identify a space to innovate is to have an internal conversation with yourself if you believe there's a brand name or loyalty, and specifically in relation here to you realizing that Killerspin had an awesome opportunity to innovate within the ping pong industry. And I think for future or young entrepreneurs out there right now, it's an interesting takeaway when you are trying to assess an entire market landscape of potential entrepreneurial endeavors is think to yourself, what industries right now don't have any brand loyalty, and how can you go in there and demand more value for your customers? And the last one is you can't have experimentation without failure. And I think that if you're going to constantly innovate, improve, and take intelligent risks, then ultimately you need to make sure that you're willing to go the extra mile, and especially with your end client in mind.
The last thing I would say is just give advice to entrepreneurs: live way below your means. Live way below your means. There's going to be a tsunami coming that you can't see, a tornado, a hurricane, a flood, financials, the stock market crash. You can't predict them, but you know they're going to happen. And if you're not prepared for them, you're going to get washed out to sea. So,
great point. Great point. When times are good, you tend to, you can either continue to roll the dice, invest forward, and keep investing those profits forward, or buying stuff for yourself, right? Or you can put some of that aside and make sure you're ready for the next coronavirus, right? Or whatever's going to challenge your business, the next competitor that comes in and does stuff for nothing, whatever it is. So great point. Robert, thanks a lot, man.
Thank you, man.
Awesome.
It's so good to talk to you.
You're awesome. Really appreciate
my best to the family.
You too, buddy. Appreciate your time today, and what a great episode of Ditch Digger CEO with our buddy Robert. Thank you, and have an awesome day, buddy.
Thank you, man. Take care. See you, Robbie and Chris.
See you, buddy. Another great episode of Ditch Digger CEO. See ya.